The shutter was not fixed closed, so she pulled it open, sticking one leg through the window and then the other. But as she cleared a silly hand caught her ankle, pulling her into the straw. It was Constantine. Osrith struggled, swinging around and managed to scramble to her feet. In the darkness, Constantine grabbed out to her. No. Constantine. It was him. He had barred the door. You were speaking to Grigoria? He accused. Straw shuffled by his feet as he tried again to grasp her. I speak to many men, Osrith replied. The hayloft was wide and at the end by the steps it was taller. If she could get over to there, where a lantern glowed. He liked you, Constantine whined. So? Osrith shot back. I didn't like him. When has that ever mattered? He bore down on her, swiping towards her, then struck her face with the flat of his hand. Osrith was shocked. Constantine had barely spoken to her since leaving Doya, and now he had hit her. In the time it has taken for her to comprehend this, Constantine hit her again. No. Stop it, Constantine. Osrith shouted back, bearing down on her in anger. But it was the wrong thing to have done and he gripped her shoulders and pushed her down onto the straw bales which were covered with oiled wool cloth. She tried to get up but he was tearing at her jerkin, then at her shirt. Osrith managed to swing out a leg, slipping from under him leaving a torn shirt in his hand, her chest throbbing with exertion. What was hers problem? Why was he attacking her? Half naked, save some torn pieces of cloth across her chest, Osrith swung her hand to strike out as he lunged for her again and this time, grabbed wrists, holding them tight over her head with one hand as he drove her towards the wall next to the window. A thought struck Osrith as she looked down through the blackness of the ground below, and she thought for a moment he would throw her out. But instead, he bore down on her, face close to her own. You liked him? Grigoria. He gripped both her wrists in one hand while swinging the other back and thumping her in the face when she squirmed. He was angry. Osrith struggled again but he held her fast. You want what he would have done? Constantine took her wrists higher, which hurt Osrith's ribs as her back arched more. She tried to fight him off, but Constantine bent his head down towards Osrith's face then, turning bitter hard on her neck, just under her ear, his black hair brushing her shoulder as his left hand fought her ragged shirt for her breasts. No. No. Osrith cried and she struggled again but this only seemed to inflame him more, and she could feel his hardness on her leg. Inclining her head up, she got out of his grasp, hitting him hard in the shoulder to do so. He looked back, astonished. No, Constantine. Find a servant. You are leaving. Constantine complained, as if she had betrayed him. He fought to catch hold of her again but missed. You arranged it. You wanted me to. All of it was your idea, says Domhnall. She could hear him catching his breath, an aerosol of that night's spirit leaving his mouth. Constantine went to hit her again, and this time, Osrith pushed him over, but he managed to catch her arm and he pulled Osrith clumsily on top of himself. They were fighting, as they had done in those years before, when Osrith was more Constantine's size, when he envied her skill with a sword, when he commanded her and tricked her. He was stronger than Osrith now, but she realized as he struck out, his blows were spirit-affected, inaccurate and weak. You want me to go? Osrith shouted back, able to push Constantine off, as he rolled on top of her and she tried to smooth down her damaged jerkin. The shirt was beyond repair. But Constantine was quick enough now as he scrambled after her, and he grabbed her ankles. Osrith fell, awkwardly, her mending ribs giving out a shooting pain. I need you to go. Only you can do this. He panted. And what is this? Perhaps if she talked, he may relax, for she was still struggling against his strength. But he did not answer. Instead, his hands roamed her body, as they had always done, to feel that she was there. No, Constantine. Osrith exclaimed as waves, from a different time and place, surrounded her, water pouring round her ears and up to her eyes as she tries to stand on tiptoe. She shook her head, trying not to think of it. She was here and now, and here and now. Constantine was doing his best to get the rest of her clothes off. He wanted to hump her. Osrith knew. And she knew she did not want to be held down. She did not want to feel helpless, as Nine Fingers and his brother had made her feel helpless, as Constantine made to push his cock out to her. And Osrith knew how not to drown that night, how to swim, to survive. She had seen a servant girl do it, with a willing soldier from Mya's guard at the back of the monastery on the night of Findlaith's funeral. And Osrith wanted him to fill her up, to make her feel that shiver all through her hips and back and chest. She found his cock, which was growing hard, and held on to it. She was in charge, not Nine Fingers. She wanted pleasure, too. For that, she needed Constantine stiff. The prince groaned, as Osrith gripped his cock, getting from under him as the first in line to Alba's throne sank into the straw. She eased his foreskin back and forth so his wetness squelched between her fingers. He wasn't yet fully stiff, but Osrith sat on him anyway, engulfing him, her knees apart, on either side of his hips, moving herself on top of him. She raised her bum more and found pleasure building around her hips almost at once as she drove him further into herself. Then she found that squeezing her cunt and driving down onto him at the same time was causing him to sigh out of control breaths, and, as his own pleasure grew, so did hers. Constantine reached up, under her shirt to fondle her breasts, running his sword-calloused hands over her skin, her nipples pushing against his palms and pushing into them. This friction caused Osrith to jerk downwards onto him, warming pleasure flooding her breasts, her chest, her waist. Reaching round to her buttocks, Constantine pulled her to his rhythm, which didn't take him long. Osrith closed her eyes. Then, unexpectedly, the face of the man crystallized in her mind. It was his deft hands moving her breasts, drawing out her nipples between thumb and forefinger, making her groan. Not Constantine, where had he learned to do that, which catalyzed her climax? His cock pleasuring her cunt, hitting a spot which was getting her off beautifully. Osrith bore down onto Constantine's mound with all her might, and came. Later, she would sleep in Constantine's arms, there, in the stables, and in the morning, would dress in the clothes Domhnall had arranged to be brought to the stables for her, left by the stable door, accompanying a tentative knock. She would dress in them, considering them much more roomy, after rolling what she could salvage of her old clothes into her blanket, leaving Constantine asleep in the straw. She would consider Domhnall's words, "Be a man but do not deny you are a woman." Osrith would consider that there was no doubt she was a woman last night. She would slip off to the kitchens, dense-headed from the Uistspetha, for a cup of hot water in which to stew the last of her abortificant root, wash her hair and tie the growing strands in a lace and grab a crust of grey bread to satisfy her for the day, before wrapping more for them all in a linen cloth from the kitchen cupboard. Despite his anger still at her leaving, she would ride to the coast with Tagd and Fergus, where a boat would carry them past Strathclyde to the North Cumbraland coast. They were there to raise support for Domhnall, and the first place they would be looking for it would be Halligwithauckland, the land of King Guthred. The second was to dissuade the Norse army led by two brothers from allying with Eochaid. And third, Osrith was there to spy. It was the three of them, Fergus at the sail as Tagd's expertise got them afloat and assail before daybreak, and Osrith felt pleased they were all three together again. It was as it should be. And, as the boat was about to leave Anaran's fortress harbour, Tagd to pilot the craft through the treacherous local waters, two men stood watching. Osrith was unable to deduce who they were, until the mist cleared a little and she made out Domhnall and Constantine. Her heart would beat faster when she missed the third cousin, and her spirits rose as one man ran to join them. She turned her head, trying to discern who the man was, willing it with all her might to be Domhnall. The running man jumped aboard to join them just in time. It was Grioghair.